Բարև սիրելի ուղդիրներ, ես Rafi Manoukian եմ, Glendale քաղաքի կանցաբարը, շնորհակալ եմ, որ նոր ենք միանաք ինձ այսօր։ Ինչպես որ անցյալ շաբաթը այս մի քանի շաբաթը, այս մի քանի ամիսը մեր ծրագիրները ընդդություններու մասին մի դիլան եւ քանի որ հունիս 7-ին ընդդություններն են եւ այդ պատճառով ընդդություններու մասին մի դիլան հաջորդ մի քանի ամիսը նախ եւ առաջ կուզեմ շարունակել գրկնեմ այս հարցը, որ գուզեմ որ բոլորդ արձանագրվեք, եթե չեք արձանագրված անպայման կացեք եւ արձանագրվեք, որ գրնակ քվեարկել ընդդության օրը եւ եթե ծեր հասցեն փոխածեք, ծեր բնակչության դերը, բնակարանի դերը փոխածեք, նորեն պետք է արձանագրվեք, եթե ծեր անունը փոխածեք, նորեն պետք է արձանագրվեք եւ եթե գուզեք ինչպես որ անցյալին ասած եմ, ծեր գուսակցության անդամակցությունը գուզեք փոխել, նորեն գրնակ երթալ եւ արձանագրվել, գրնակ արձանագրվել you can get registered online ինտերնետի վրա գնաք register ալ կամ գնաք քաղաքապետարանի քարտուղարի գրասենյակ երթալ եւ այդտեղ ցեզի ցուցումներ գտան որ արձանագրեն այսօր հյուր ունիմ գրթական խորհրդի տեխնոլոգիաները մեկուն հետը ուրեմն այս տեխնոլոգիան ուսուցիչ է Los Angeles Unified School District-ի շրջանը bachelor's in education and teaching եւ master's in human development այսօր մեր հետ է Ingrid Gunnell, որ գմասնակցի Area B, B շրջանի գրթական խորհրդի ընդդություններուն։ Եվ այսօրվա հարցազրույց անգլերենով բիտվարեմ, քան որ մեր հյուր անգլիախոս է։ Ուրեմն today I want to introduce Ingrid Gunnell, who is a teacher in LA Unified School District, a very active individual in the community and in the schools of Glendale schools. She has a bachelor's in education and teaching and a master's in human development. Ingrid, welcome to our program.
Thank you for having me.
Sure. Ingrid, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background. I knew your mother during my early days of campaigning in the 90s, late 90s or early 2000s, and she was always very supportive. So could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, well, thank you for that. So I was born and raised here. My parents moved here in 1972, and I was born here in 1974. I went to all Glendale public schools, and then through high school, I went to LA County High School for the arts. I went away to college. As you mentioned, I have my bachelor's degree in elementary education and my master's degree from Pacific Oaks College in Pasadena in human development, and I've been teaching in LAUSD since 1998.
You've been very active in Glendale, even though you're teaching in Los Angeles Unified School District, but you know fairly well the educational system in California, and you have been very active in advocating for families in the state as well as locally, and you have a number of endorsements as well. Could you tell us about some of the issues that you have advocated at the state level?
Sure. So I've been advocating at the state level and actually nationally as well for years. A main issue that I've been advocating for is increased revenue for our public schools.
Okay.
Charter school accountability and transparency, which we were able to pass right the year before the pandemic. So that was a huge win for our public schools.
Right.
At the national level, a huge issue is funding for IDEA, the Individuals and Disabilities in Education Act.
Right.
We are consistently fighting for the federal government to fund that at the 40% level, which they unfortunately never have. So just a myriad of issues.
Right. You are running on the platform of representing all of everyone in the school district. What does that mean? You know, every candidate that runs, they say, I represent all. So what does it mean to you when you say, I want to represent all?
Yeah, so of course we have a very large Armenian population, both in the community and the student population. I've worked on Armenian genocide recognition and education issues for years. So that is very near and dear to my heart and important to me. We also need to lift up other communities, specifically our Black students. We only have about a 2% population of Black community members, inclusive of students, right, faculty, and staff. And I think we need to do more to lift up our Black students, our students who are from other marginalized groups, LGBTQIA+, the AAPI communities, the Latino communities, and communities that have been traditionally marginalized.
Right. And how do you look at classroom and teachers and representation in terms of teachers and supporting teachers?
Yeah, we definitely are in a crisis right now. More than 50% of teachers surveyed nationwide want to leave the profession. There are
that is not something that is settling for a parent who's sending their child to school.
Exactly. People don't want to come into public education. It's a very difficult field to be in, with a lot of challenging and conflicting messages. And people, the low pay and the disrespect does not draw people into this field. There are entire colleges that are no longer offering education fields. The state of California, the teacher education programs have been plummeting over the last 20 years.
What do you mean by disrespect?
So we are professionals.
Right.
We have a minimum of a bachelor's degree.
As teachers.
Yes.
As teachers.
As teachers. And other class certificated personnel, school nurses, school psychologists, psychiatric social workers. We all have a minimum of a bachelor's degree. Many have master's and doctorates in their respective field. We already have curriculum that has been approved and has been vetted by professionals, by parents, by community. Yet we are constantly and consistently seeing this message that teachers are lazy, teachers earn too much, teachers don't do enough for our students. But it's the exact opposite is the truth, and there are reasons why people don't want to come into public education, and it's not because we earn too much money or we have the respect. It's because we are overworked and underappreciated.
And when you say we are overworked, is that because the number of students per teacher is skyrocketing at this point? Is that where the overwork comes in?
So that is definitely a huge part of it. California does have some of the highest student to teacher, and then some very high student to librarian, high student to counselor ratios. That is a huge part of it. But then there are also mandates, teach this, do that, go to this meeting. Many of these things are expected, but they're not compensated, and nothing is taken off the plate. Things are just added on.
I think K through 12, the kids are so easily influenced. I think having really qualified and top-notch teachers is really important. And for school districts all over the United States, supporting the teachers is really important, because that's who is out there on the front line with the kids and the children. I know in terms of supporting teachers, you also advocated for maternity for public school educators. Tell us where that concluded, and why is it? I'm a parent, and I know how important that is. But if you could tell us about the importance of maternity leave for the educators. Sure.
So when you have a field of education, more than 70% of the employees are female.
Right.
And they don't have, unless their local union and school district have negotiated it, they don't have a single second of paid maternity leave. We did get a bill to the governor's desk a few years ago, which was vetoed. It was stated it would be too costly. But we need to look at this as a justice issue, because when we see declining enrollment in teacher education programs and we see people wanting to leave the profession, and you have 70% of these people are women, they are not able to stay in this profession because it costs too much to have a child. So it is a huge issue when we're talking about teacher recruitment and retention.
Right. And as you said, teacher retention recruitment and retention is really important. I want to share with you an experience I've had in my and this goes back to not the Armenian genocide recognition, but the education of the Armenian genocide curriculum. I went to Van Nuys High School when I was younger, and I remember the first year I was taking U.S. history class, and one of the things they were teaching us was about the Trail of Tears, and I was so impressed that was being taught in a public school, and I thought, this is so similar to the Armenian genocide. And I started looking through the book. I go, there's got to be something about the Armenian genocide in here, because that was 60 to 80,000 Native Americans that were displaced and taken out of their homes. And for me, it was, you know, 1.5 million or over 1.5 million Armenians were displaced, but I did not find it anywhere in the history books, although it was a U.S. history book. But still, I thought when it came to a small portion where it deals with kind of world history, it would mention it. What is your position in terms of Armenian genocide education in the public schools?
So I think it's crucial. I think it was considered the first genocide of the 20th century, where 1.5 million people were either murdered or, as you said, walked to literal death by the Ottoman Turkish government. I think it's important that it's taught because it puts things in perspective. We go from the Armenian genocide to the Holocaust, and then other wars throughout the 20th century. I think it's very important for our students to understand the history and the historical context. And to this day, the same history is repeating itself with Artsakh and the wars that broke out during the pandemic. So we're still seeing the mentality of the displacement of Armenians as okay by this one empire in present day, 2022.
Right, and it's continuing. And I think educating having a segment of about the genocide, not just the Armenian genocide. I mean, genocides and men's inhumanity to men in terms of teaching materials in the classroom is really important. You are also running in support of families. How would you, being on the Glendale Unified School District Board, how would you be able to support families on that board?
So I'm a single working mom. I work full time. I'm a parent. I'm very involved in my union. And I know that parents are not always available. Sometimes we might need to have meetings on Saturday morning, meetings at night. Things that will support our working class families. It's not always easy for a parent to just take a day off. And I recognize that both as a classroom teacher and as a parent. We need supports for our families, and that's very important to me, and to listen to our families. During the pandemic, I started a group called Glendale Parents and Educators Together, so that parents and educators could really listen to each other, and we could get information that was accurate and not through someone else's filter.
Right, and how can we engage? And I know that whenever a parent is involved in the school, the children do better in that school. And how can we get more parents? And we have a number of bilingual parents. We have a number of parents who do speak English, but in terms of technical issues as it relates to governance, as well as the way the whole system works, they might not be aware of it. They might not be aware that they can get involved in the school. How can we get some of these parents, not just Armenian, Hispanic, and other Korean and other minorities, how can we get these parents to be more involved in their children's school and in the children's daily lives at the school?
I really think it's one-on-one outreach. We as parents are so inundated with emails, social media posts, the GUSD app. We're constantly getting notifications. But it's so overwhelming that you don't really know as a parent what is actually important, especially for your own child, because you might be getting a general announcement and it might have nothing to do with the high school. It might be elementary. It is very overwhelming. And I think it's very important that we do the personal outreach so that parents know what is important for their child at their school, and they're not overwhelmed by the constant barrage of information.
And how could we enhance the student experience as it relates to public schools?
I think we need to listen to the students. I think it's very hard to be a student right now. You know, for the last 20 years, we've had standardized testing. We've been teaching to the test. We haven't really been teaching to creativity. And then the pandemic came, and all of the inadequacies of the public school system, especially here in California, where we were 43rd in per pupil funding. Now we've moved up a little bit. I think we're around 37th, but all the inadequacies have been laid bare.
Right.
And so this is nothing new, but everybody's seen it. And I think students, the youth will lead, right? The youth have always led. And I think we need to listen more to them. I'm very glad that Glendale does have a student school board member, and they have done student panels. I think that's great, and I think we need to continue to uplift the student voice.
I was a youth once, and I wish they had listened to me, and things would be different today. Definitely. In terms of disciplinary practices, what is your take on disciplinary practices? And you've said that you would audit the disciplinary practices as well.
Yeah.
For students, let's say.
Right. I believe in restorative practices, but I believe that they need to be implemented fully, completely, and there needs to be buy-in from the school site personnel. It cannot be something that's just told to these teachers or staff. There really needs to be buy-in, and including that buy-in, there needs to be training that's paid. There needs to be materials and resources that are available. And if teachers, maybe they're supposed to be doing math, but there was an issue at the break period and they're actually doing a restorative circle, that needs to be honored, and that teacher should not be punished for doing a restorative circle while their lesson plan said, you know,
right,
teach chapter 2 in algebra. So I think we need to honor the restorative practices process. I think parents can also be more involved in the restorative practices process. That actually is a key component. That is a huge part of how I would talk about discipline, because it's really community building, so you can prevent a lot of the issues before they start.
In Glendale, there's a number of after-school programs as well. There's Daftian Mariamian, who have a large program in the schools. Are you supportive of after-school programs, especially with families that might have single parents who can't pick up their kids, and the additional cultural education that is disseminated in those programs?
I definitely think after-school programs are vital. Not every parent can be at the school, especially for elementary, at 2:30. If they work till 5, those after-school programs fill a huge need. And that increases attendance, which increases academic and social emotional outcomes. So definitely after-school supports and programs for our students are very important.
You have also advocated for inclusive teaching practices. And what do you mean by inclusive teaching practices?
So right now we're seeing
from a non-teacher point, explain it to a lay non-teacher.
Right. So we're seeing across the country some attacks on public education and our curriculum. There are multiple states that are banning inclusive teaching of the truth.
Some states are banning books now.
I actually saw burning books, and I was shocked.
It is shocking. It is shocking. To me, it's shocking that is going on at this point.
Yeah.
Anywhere in the United States.
And it's right here in our own state. And that is very scary. And that's one of the reasons I decided to run, is that it's not only public education, it's really our democracy is in question right now with some of these laws and resolutions being passed.
Right. And inclusive teaching practices includes?
Yeah, so it includes all people. It's not just music shouldn't only be taught from the European, right, Mozart and Schubert. It should be inclusive of, you know, Korean drumming and
everything. And all the rest.
It should be inclusive. It shouldn't highlight one dominant group over everybody else.
Right. And in terms of people being able to reach out to your campaign and either helping or asking questions or any sort of communication with your campaign, how would they go about doing that?
So our website is ingridgunnell.com. It's just myname.com. We're also on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. Okay. And as I said earlier, communication, this is a campaign that is a we. It's not an Ingrid campaign, it's a we campaign. So I would love for people to reach out. Very good.
Նորեն ինչպես որ ասի, այս ծրագիրը ընդդություններու մասին է եւ Ingrid Gunnell մասնակցի այս Glendale School District-ի Glendale գրթական խորհրդի Area B ընդդություններուն եւ եթե արիթ ունենաք, ինչպես որսի, եթե արձանագրված եք, կասեք եւ քվեարկեցեք, եթե չեք արձանագրված, արձանագրվեցեք եւ քվեարկեցեք Ingrid Gunnell for Area B. Any other issues that I might have missed in my little interview here today that you would like to give to our community?
Yeah, so we did touch on teaching truth, the mental health crisis we are facing with both our students and our faculty and staff, both their own trauma, but then their secondary trauma from working with their students. We need to focus on mental health supports and bargaining with our teachers union and our classified union. We really need to uplift and respect our educators, give them what they need to work well with our students and what they need to live well on one salary.
There is an issue about racial and social justice on your website. How would an individual on the school board be able to address issues of social and ethnic justice?
So one of the issues that I worked on before the pandemic was getting the school board to pass the Black Lives Matter at Schools resolution, and they did. So I was very happy with that. But passing a resolution does not bring transformation. So we need to put our resolutions into practice and bring transformative change. So that particular resolution, we need to really uplift our Black students. We need to recruit Black educators, specifically Black male educators, into our school district. That's just one example, but it could be any specific racial group or marginalized group, the LGBTQIA plus community, where we uplift issues that impact them, where we uplift them both in our classrooms and at our school sites.
As individuals, just like any other child, so they don't feel like they're different or oppressed in any way, shape, or form. Well, that is our interview. If there's anything else you'd like to say, again, let me just say that եթե գուզեք օգտակար լալ Ingrid-ին, գնաք իր website երդալ ingridgunnell.com եւ գնաք իրեն օգտակար լալ either տրամական դեսագելով կամ օգնությամբ գնաք երդալ volunteer-նել եւ օգնել իրեն որ մասնակցի եւ ախտե այս ընտրություններուն։ Ուրեմն այս չափ մեր այսօրվա ծրագրին շնորհակալ եմ որ մնացիք մեզ հետ, կտեսնվենք քաշ շաբաթ միևնույն ժամին մնաք բարով։